Welcome to the First Things First podcast. And first things first, we need you to subscribe and leave comments letting us know what you think of the show. We're listening. I'm Nick Wright, joined by two of my favorite people, Jenna Wolf, Chris Carter. Now, let's get the show started.
Happy Monday and good morning. Welcome to First Things First. I'm Ebony K. Williams in for Jenna Wolf. That over there is Hall of Famer Chris Carter, and that is Nick Wright.
Good to see you, Ebony.
Good
How
to
are
see you both.
Welcome
Thank you.
to First Things First. I mean,
Absolutely.
you've been here before.
Yeah.
But I wasn't here.
I wasn't
Yes.
here either. You were here Christmas Day?
Christmas Day.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
No, it was my pleasure, and really, so fun to be with y'all both today.
Absolutely. It is a fun day.
It's going to be a fun day to be next to Nick Wright.
Well, no, it's just a fun day to be doing this job. You know, I was theoretically going to be off this week, and I said, nah, I can't be off NBA trade deadline. I might give myself a midweek vacation after what we saw yesterday, but I'm glad I'm here today, CC.
Yeah, because you almost gave yourself a stroke before the trade deadline. But that's another story.
Yeah, well,
I had a feeling you were going to be a little messy today, Chris.
That's the ancient
I
history.
got to keep my eye on Nick Wright.
Got to keep him honest, huh?
Okay.
All right, we'll take
try.
that. All right. So the new look Cavs, they debuted on Sunday, and the results looking pretty good. The four additions to Cleveland combined for 49 points in a 121-99 smackdown over the Boston Celtics. Now, all of this was behind 24 points and 10 assists from LeBron James. LeBron spoke about his new teammates after the game.
It's almost like the new guys who've been here. You know, started with George and, you know, his on-the-ball pressure and, you know, him just running the team. And then the three guys came off the bench. You know, Jordan is you know, he's ready to score at any point in time, but his composure was great. Rodney plays with so much poise, and you know, Larry was just controlling the perimeter, saying great pick and rolls, got him a lob, got him a dunk. So, you know, it's a good start for the new guys, good start for all of us, you know, with our revamped team so far.
All right, Chris Carter, a good start almost seems like an understatement after what we saw last night. So are the Cavs the new kings of the East?
Well, they got the king. Mm-hmm. That's a good place to start. Sure. But to me, in watching LeBron James's career, I think that this can be a turning point for him. Of course, we know when he left Cleveland the first time, that was a turning point. But with the overall athleticism that they put around LeBron and where the team actually was, like what they had at stake, and it's more than just basketball game. It's more than just being 5 or 6 games behind Toronto and Boston. It's, man, can we keep LeBron engaged enough to keep him here through this season mentally? Because if they didn't make those trades, it was going to be hard for LeBron, looking to go to 8 straight finals. With the group of guys that he had, I mean, they did a great job. Colby, the general manager, whoever, the owner, whoever you want to give credit to, but
Dan
collectively,
Gilbert, Kobe Altman, LeBron as well.
With them guys coming together and deciding to make these trades, because now they're far more athletic. They can play several different styles. They can get up and down the court. They're better defensively. Sure. And LeBron is happy. And people say, well, what does that have to do with it? It's got a lot to do with it.
Because leadership is from the top down, from your experience, right?
Yeah, there is no doubt that LeBron being happier, and this was not a team that could win an NBA championship. So LeBron said he's about championships. He's chasing the ghost. The only way he can get there is for them to upgrade the talent. And they could not, even though they were desperate. I can't see how they could have done better, Nick, at the trade deadline than they did. The largest trade by volume in NBA history, to be able to get this young and this athletic and to have kind of some built-in chemistry. That's the part right there that I didn't see.
Here's the thing. So the question is, are the Cavs back to being favorites in the East? Of course they're back to being favorites in the East. And what I'm curious is why people would be surprised at what we saw. What have we known for a decade in the NBA? LeBron +4, active, happy guys is a good team no matter who those 4 guys are. LeBron +4, active, happy guys who can shoot is an unguardable NBA offense. And they demoralized the #1 defense in basketball yesterday on what was supposed to be a celebration in Boston. Ooh. It turned into a wake before the funeral in Boston, and LeBron had a bit of a captive audience because typically in a regular season home blowout or where the home team is getting blown out, the fans can leave. but they couldn't leave yesterday. They had to stay for Paul Pierce. So they had to sit
It's kind of like the preacher that says he's working on his clothes and then he takes an offering, but he still keeps you there.
Because somebody says, take your time, Pastor.
Yeah.
Right, inevitably. And they did.
It's so ironic to where we are. We start the season with Boston and the Gordon Hayward in Cleveland. Awful injury. Boston goes off. They're going. It seems like these are two franchises going two different directions. And they meet up the first game after the trade, and they get embarrassed. Yeah. I mean, LeBron James' ability, and I think that, Nick, you'll have to help me on this one, his ability to adapt to new faces, I believe, add to the lore of who LeBron is. Because you have to be a brilliant basketball player to be able to orchestrate and be able to run an offense and have these guys take ownership in the offense and the defense. So I believe, too, it's the old theory. People like playing with LeBron. Now, I know Kyrie requested a trade, and we typically we haven't seen that part, and that was the part that had us a little puzzled.
And Jay Crowder wasn't happy, and Isaiah Thomas weren't. Not everyone is happy playing with LeBron.
Question about that. Are those exceptions to a rule that people are
historically,
happy?
They do seem to be exceptions for guys to not be happy. But Isaiah and Jay Crowder, maybe there's a reason they weren't quite happy with LeBron, which is something CeCe can expand on later. Kyrie was happy until he wasn't. Kyrie was happy to be able to go to NBA Finals until he wasn't. But I want to talk, you mentioned, adding to LeBron's lore, right?
Yes.
I want to go, everyone's going to focus on Sunday. I want to go to Friday for a moment. Because in Atlanta. I know Atlanta's terrible. I get that. But I got really frustrated last week with a lot of people, maybe my partner included, that one of the knocks on LeBron while the team was struggling was, man, I wish he would do a little more of what Kobe or Michael would do, which is not just take 17 shots and go 10 for 17. Take 30 shots. Take over these games. And LeBron, consistently throughout his 15-year career, has played his way, which is the smart way, which is the efficient way. And that leads us to Friday, a game where they were only 1-point favorites against Atlanta. Why? Because they had lost 6 guys to a trade. None of the 4 they had traded for were there. They had a guy named John Holland. Chris, you called me. You were like, who's the dude with the dreads I've never seen on the Cavs
I thought someone snuck on the bench in Atlanta. I mean, straight from the club. You can get on the bench.
London Parentis was getting minutes. Jetty Osman was starting. That's the
first
team they
NBA
had.
start.
And it's not just that the Cavs won. Forget that. LeBron sets his career high, not in points, like Kobe or Michael might do in a game where they're undermanned, but in assists. 19 assists when he's got a handful of D-leaguers playing with him. And then yesterday, why were those guys comfortable? Why in that game did the new guys shoot 6 for 6 on shots from LeBron in the first half, I believe it was? Because he will instantly put you in the best position to do what you do best. And because he's such a student of the game, he already is studying, if you listen to what he's saying, where these guys like to catch the ball to shoot, where these guys are most comfortable on the court. So LeBron's the one guy that I've ever seen in this league that you could... We used to ask this hypothetical. If you dropped LeBron on any team in the East, would they become the favorites? Well, yesterday was your answer. Like pick the team, let LeBron figure out what the best rotation is around him, not have guys who are unhappy or don't want to be there or have other agendas as Isaiah Thomas might have for a good reason. And what are they going to be? One of the best offenses in the league. If you add to it that they're young and athletic, the defense will come along.
Let me say this. I saw a different LeBron James yesterday after the game to the point where he could barely give his post-game interview. He was hoarse because, to your point, Nick, he was telling the guys where to go, how to be best positioned to be successful yesterday. And really what stood out to me, guys, Osman, when he takes that steal, he goes up for that open dunk, misses it, and the first person to put their hands together to keep him motivated and focused in the game is LeBron James. For me, that was a new style of leadership from LeBron. Not saying he's not done it before, but just energized on a different level.
Right, and we have to understand, too, no one's under the type of pressure. Nick, we talked about it on Friday. No one's under the type of pressure that LeBron is under. And it's when he's having fun on the court, it's a huge relief to him. I mean, basketball is his safe haven. When I used to hang around Michael Jordan, the reason why he played golf, people don't bother him on the golf course. His safe haven was on the court. So LeBron being happy and engaged, it's hard. You've been to 7 straight finals. Yeah. The pressure, is he going to leave Cleveland? Trying to win with this team, trying to stay in this moment. But you could see his overall leadership. And Osman wouldn't be playing. LeBron, he went to the coaching staff, said, we need to get this guy more minutes. So the overall story of the Cleveland Cavaliers will always have to do with LeBron James. What kind of leader is he going to be down the stretch? This right here is like a blood transfusion. So I expect to see the absolute best. I expect us to hear LeBron back in the MVP conversation because, to me, this is one of the greatest adjustments we have seen a star player make. When you make 4 new changes, 3 guys 25. Nance Jr. coming back to where he was born, in Ohio. He went to high school in Akron, where LeBron went to high school. His dad's name in the rafters. He said, disputed, I almost had a tear when they traded for me. So I think LeBron will be re-engaged, and it will be entertaining to watch those little things that you pointed out of his overall leadership.
And whether people agree with me that LeBron's the greatest player of all time or not, everyone agrees he's one of the smartest players we've ever seen. And we now have the answer, I believe, to a question that was puzzling, which was, what happened to LeBron's game in January? Why was LeBron not playing? He wasn't hurt. He doesn't get tired. He's leading the league in minutes. We've seen no reason to believe that's something he can't handle. Why was LeBron's numbers and why? Because they could have won more in January just based on his own. If his level of play was what it had been in December and November. And I believe we have the answer. LeBron knew the team they had was broken as far as winning a championship. And if LeBron raised the tide of all boats to where in January they were around 500, maybe a game over, they might not make this major roster overhaul. He found out, I know this for a fact, he found out Wednesday afternoon that these trades were in place. They weren't set because they were potentially going to do a different trade for DeAndre Jordan. What has he done since he found out the new players are coming? 37, 10, and 15 game-winning jumper. 22, 12, and 19 career high in assists, and 24, 8, and 10 through 3 quarters last night to remind the Celtics, y'all ain't ready. That's what he's done since he knew this new team was coming, and I'm not quite certain why folks doubted that would happen.
Because we didn't know the trade.
We knew trades were coming, CC.
We didn't know that.
Man, and now LeBron's back in the MVP discussion. I said that Thursday, America, CC threw his pin in the air, said, oh, give me a break. He's going to be back in the MVP.
Do you have a cookie to give to Nick?
Oh, no. I ain't need no cookie.
We'll get him one for the break.
I ain't need no cookie. I'm happy.
Cookie, Nick. That's
I don't need nothing. I'm very happy.
He'll be all right.
I'm very happy.
Nick Wright, people.
Much more on
Wrong
LeBron.
quite often, but right on LeBron.
Right on LeBron. Much more on LeBron coming up next. All right, welcome back to First Things First. We're joined now by Yahoo Sports' Chris Mannix. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Mannix. How are you, brother?
Wonder where we're going to go with this.
He's excited about this.
Okay.
I'm always excited whenever Mannix shows up.
Yes.
Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
Be careful.
Okay.
There's a couple landmines out there. Okay?
I know. I just know where we're going.
He called me yesterday and mentioned Chris, and he wasn't talking about me. He was talking about Chris with an H.
I'm D'd up. Let's go.
Okay,
let's go. Let's do it.
Well, with that.
Let's do it.
All right, so the 2 favorites in the Eastern Conference squared off yesterday. This one, all Cavs, baby. Cleveland won 121-99 behind a 24-point and 10-assist game from a newly energized, rejuvenated LeBron James. The 4 new additions debuted for the Cavs, scoring a combined 49 points. Now, Chris, after watching yesterday's game, do you believe that the Celtics are still the favorite, or is there a new king, pun intended here, in the East?
I do not believe the Celtics are still the favorite.
Oh, no! Hold on, stop everything. Say that on camera one more time.
I do not believe the Celtics are still the favorite. I wrote this last night, and because I am an objective observer.
Okay, now this is what I'm trying. This is important right here. This is not personal, but it is personal, because this is what I'm trying to get Nick to kind of have a little more peripheral vision. When you get new information,
yes,
you get the opportunity as a professional broadcaster to potentially change what your opinion is. Yes. And that's where you are right now.
Let me just take it from 10,000 feet first right here. What Kobe Altman did on Thursday, the GM of the Cavaliers, he basically went on TV with a sign that said Nick Wright is wrong. Because he said,
oh, really?
he said, what was his phrase? slow death march. Kobe Altman, the GM of the team, said the team that was currently constituted, the team that you swore up and down was going to the NBA Finals, was on a slow death march.
Right,
this is
that
a guy
was going to end in the finals.
No.
Got beat by the team in the West.
No. The slow death march. It was over. So what did he do? He did the virtually unprecedented. He went out and upended almost half his roster. He went out and changed almost half of his rotation. He brought 4 guys in with a third of the season left. Now, these 4 guys, they brought in the right guys. My opinion of 2 of those guys is very high. Number 1, Rodney Hood, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the NBA today. He was drafted 23rd for inexplicable reasons. He has been underappreciated for the last 3-4 years for inexplicable reasons. That's number 1. He's going to play extremely well off of LeBron James. Number 2 is George Hill, who changes the dynamic of the point guard position. George Hill, who last year averaged almost 16 points in the playoffs for the Jazz, who 4 years ago was playing in the conference finals with the Indiana Pacers. Those 2 players, plus what you get from Clarkson and from Nance, it totally changes what that team was, Nick. Nick, they are the furthest thing from what they were, which is why I've turned back to the Cavaliers.
So you didn't know that there was a trade deadline?
I did. And I came on the show the day before and said George Hill probably going to make it happen. I said I think that changed them a little bit.
Yes.
Everything else changed them a lot.
Okay, well, so let's stick with the George Hill, Rodney Hood.
Okay.
Because those 2 guys, I read your article this morning. I believe it starts with you had your chance, Eastern Conference. The Cavs right there, right freaking there. I can hear the pain in your voice. You had your chance, now it's gone. You say the Death Star's back. I believe in an earlier column when you were telling people to book their tickets in Boston for the finals. You can reference the Death Star as well. But let's look at George Hill, Rodney Hood, how they got these guys. Can we show America what these trades were? So the Jazz gave up George Hill. They got back Jay Crowder and Derrick Rose, who they bought out. The Jazz gave up Rodney Hood.
Yep.
The Kings gave up George Hill. They got back Joe Johnson, who they bought out, and Iman Shumpert, who's injured, and a second-round pick. I say that to say this. Any team in the league could have gotten those guys. Why didn't Danny
Well,
Ainge?
hold on. Okay, you're right. Every team in the league could have gotten those guys, but 2 things the Cavs had going for them. 1, they had an owner who was crazy enough to take on bad salaries. Rodney Hood you acquire, and if you want to keep Rodney Hood, you probably have to pay him like $15 million per year.
Rodney Hood is not a bad salary right now.
But he's going to be. That's why Utah let him go. Utah let him go because, we got Rodney Hood, we got Donovan Mitchell, one of the top rookies in the draft. We have to pay one of these guys. That's why we're willing to make that trade. Plus, Utah's loved Jay Crowder for years. They were hot on him after a while. Also, never underestimate Sacramento's willingness to do something dumb. Like Sacramento.
Well, why didn't Danny Ainge take advantage
because
of it?
Danny Ainge does not want to trade his first-round picks because even though the Celtics
They got 3 of them.
Hold on. Even though the Celtics are a legit Eastern Conference contender, Danny Ainge is still big game hunting down the road. This team checks in with New Orleans all the time. They want to know what Anthony Davis is doing. They want to know when they can get him. And if they are going to acquire Anthony Davis, I'm not saying they're going to, but if they're going to acquire Anthony Davis, it's going to be because they have extra first-round picks. What did we see during the trade deadline? First-round picks, teams had a stranglehold on them.
I get that.
Vice grip, Mirotic, and this deal. Only time first-round picks were
Let me
dealt.
just ask you a question real
Griffin.
quick. You said Danny Ainge is big game hunting.
Yes.
2 weeks ago, the discussion was the big game is this year. How well they compete against the Warriors. 4 days ago, you sat here and told me about how Greg Monroe is the big addition. Greg Monroe, who, by the way, is unplayable against LeBron, and we knew that. We don't now get to do this with the Celtics. We don't get to give the Celtics all this credit in the world. Oh, my God, they're ready to compete right now. And then when the Cavs lap them in 3 days, they're more worried about the long term.
Well, I don't think the national media thought that this team was ready for prime time. They're still a player or 2 away. And their second best player is hurt. So let's not forget that. I do agree with you in some way that Danny Ainge, he also didn't make a bad deal. He made a great deal in the Kyrie Irving. And they're still looking for another player. This is not a franchise that looks at this team as if they're a complete team. But as they stand now, can they compete with Cleveland and Toronto for the East? Yes, they can. But Cleveland is far more talented. And that happened at the trade deadline. Last Wednesday, Boston was a better basketball team than Cleveland. And we have to admit that the trade and the talent influx in Cleveland the Boston team is not prime time yet. They're still a player or two away from being prime, just based on my humble opinion.
Cleveland had to do what they did, because if they didn't, not only would they have gotten beaten in the conference finals, if they even got there, but they would have lost LeBron James. They would have lost him, and he would have had to walk away. Now, what the Cavaliers have done, Nick, is put themselves in an impossible predicament here, because if LeBron walks, they're right back to that 1963 team they were in 2011, because you've got George Hill making like $19 million next year. You got Rodney Hood, you're going to have to pay at some point. You got a whole bunch of guys that are great playing off of LeBron James, but will not be very good playing with them. Boston is not in that position. Can you sit there and say you would have met Memphis's demands, a first-round pick for Tyreek Evans, who would have helped your team in the short term, but you would have had to have given up a first to go and get him? That's nuts.
Hold on. One of Boston's first?
Yes.
What I know is this. The Celtics have the Lakers pick this coming year. In 19, they have the Clippers pick. In 19, they have the Memphis pick. They also have all their own picks. And now, once again, even though Kyrie's there, even though you're telling me the whispers, no one wants to say it, Gordon Hayward could be back this year. Even though they have a contract in Marcus Smart they want to get off of and the assets to do it. No, we're still going to wait. Because, by the way, I don't blame them for this. They're doing what they should do, which is try to wait out LeBron. Because they're
not waiting out LeBron. What they're doing is saying, look, if we put all our chips on the table and we go all out, we can beat Cleveland, and then we get pasted in the finals by Golden State. Is it worth it in Boston to get to the finals and lose in 4 or 5 games?
Going all out. You could have.
All out is giving up a first-round pick. Look,
when you have 4 more.
It doesn't matter. To get Anthony Davis, if that ever happens, to get Anthony Davis, it is going to take a Herschel Walker type of package. It is going to take the greatest trade package in sports history to get Anthony Davis out of New Orleans because of his age, his skill level, and his contract situation.
So I'm just curious. So that's what we're talking about here with the Boston. We've now moved the goalposts again to it doesn't matter because they're waiting for what you just described would take the greatest trade package ever. By the way, Anthony Davis is not available.
Right.
I know Boston keeps calling and they keep getting hung up on Anthony Davis, and I know people in Boston are like, oh, this Anthony Davis thing, because what we know is guys often get traded, top 8 players with 3 years left on their deal. He's not there. But I just want to go back for a moment. For the Cavs and what happened here. Why are you surprised that the Cleveland Cavaliers, LeBron's first year there, they remade their roster at the deadline? Second year there, they fired their coach. The third year there's the only year they haven't made a major move because they were the defending champions. Why is anyone shocked? Why do people get to say, oh, now I believe in the Cavs, when there were some people saying, of course they're going to change their roster?
What about NBA history? No team had traded that number of players. It's the largest trade that we've seen. So, who can predict that, Nick? You mentioned they were going to get George Hill. We mentioned that they might make another move. But, who knew that they were going to make that kind of move? Who knew that?
People knew they were going to make moves, but nobody thought it would be this aggressive. I mean, you talk about high risk, high reward.
And take on the salaries and the luxury tax.
Very high risk.
Well, they were willing to overpay, especially in the Laker deal. I thought that's where they might have gotten beat. I don't think you needed to give up a first-round pick, take on Jordan Clarkson's contract, when everybody knows the Lakers wanted to move off that contract to be players in the summer of 18 there. But they were willing to go deeper into their well of assets because they're in a different place than Boston. Because if they don't win this year, their franchise is probably screwed for the next 3, 4, 5 years or beyond. Boston can play the long game. Boston was a better team than Cleveland.
And they still might not win.
They were a better team than Cleveland as of before the deadline. They have now been passed because of the talent infusion that Cleveland puts to the roster.
Can it be true that Boston was this clear favorite in the East, this better team? This team.
No, he didn't say clear favorite in the East. He said better than Cleveland, though. Because Toronto could have been better.
They were going to the finals.
He believed that they were going to the finals. I know. I read Chris all the time.
You got your hotel.
Right, exactly. They get half a practice with a new team playing in Boston, a fully healthy Celtics team, and the Celtics get mollywopped. They're down 29 again. By the way, this is a problem for them.
Yes.
Being down double digits. How can the first part be true and the second part be true unless just maybe the first part wasn't true? That the Cavs were in a rut, that LeBron was not engaged. But by the way, no matter what the team was, once it was set post-trade deadline, we were going to get re-engaged LeBron, which Boston has not beaten since Paul Pierce was playing.
You can't say that the Cavs were in a rut and they got out of it because they changed the entire roster. Everyone in Cleveland, including the general manager publicly, disagrees with you. Everyone in Cleveland says they weren't a good team. They were not going to get out of that rut. They had been bad all the way throughout. So they went all in with this group, and they got the right guys. They got every piece they needed. Now, I'm still a little bit concerned. There are layers of concern here. Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance, how do they look when they're shooting jump shots in a high-pressure situation as opposed to the Lakers, who have done nothing for the last 4 years? Does George Hill...
Wait a second. Who do the Celtics have that's proven they can hit a big shot outside of Kyrie?
Kyrie.
Who?
That's pretty much it.
Oh, okay.
Al Horford's been a few shots.
Al Horford had a season in by
to a conference finals.
He's 12 years old.
I'm just saying. Look, the Cavaliers are better. I give them credit. They went all in. I don't think the Celtics should have matched them. I don't think you have a first-round pick for a Tyreek or somebody that would be a short-term fix with that team.
All right, Chris Mannix still with us on First Things First. Now, it's been a good run for LeBron James since the trade deadline, I would say so. After setting a career high with 19 assists on Friday, the real fun, though, came last night. Cleveland beat the Celtics 121-99 with the new additions of Rodney Hood, Jordan Clarkson, George Hill, and Larry Nance Jr., all combining for 49 points. Now, Chris, does this new Cav roster change your opinion about LeBron's future?
I would say it changes it. It doesn't, fundamentally alter it. Nobody really knows what LeBron's thinking. One thing other teams out there tell me about LeBron is that he likes chaos. He likes all these pieces on the chessboard, everybody to be a free agent, and all of a sudden he can kind of move things around, pick and choose where he wants to play. But I think there's something fundamental about him wanting on some level to be in Cleveland, and the fact that they were willing to surround him with the type of players that can make him a better player, make that team a better team, and show him that they're willing to trade a draft pick, show him that they're willing to take on salary. That, to me, suggests that the relationship can improve over the next few months.
To push back on that a little bit, get you a little more honest here, Chris, probability-wise, how much more probable do you think it is now for LeBron to stay in Cleveland than it was before this trade deadline?
I think if you want to put a percentage on it, you're right back at maybe 50-50. At this point. I mean, it's just, look, we can look at it logically and say, well, logically, LeBron should go to Philadelphia because Philadelphia, he'd help make a finals team right away, and he could kind of age gracefully there. He wouldn't have to be LeBron James superstar when you have Joel Embiid superstar and Ben Simmons superstar that you're playing alongside. So that's logical, but he could wind up signing with San Antonio because he's always wanted to play for Greg Popovich. We don't really know.
Yeah, I think also going back to how LeBron was raised and with respect to his mom, and LeBron was raised in a lot of chaos. But in that chaos, he thrived. He realized it was chaotic because a lot of people, when they're raised in chaotic situations, they think that that's normal.
Yes.
Like LeBron doesn't think that's normal, but he still does well when it's chaotic. I think there's a greater chance of him staying in Cleveland because the roster is stronger. And, I mean, we could see it on LeBron's faces. He enjoys playing basketball. He enjoys deferring. He's the only superstar in my era, besides Magic Johnson, that is a pass-first player. And he would love to have 20 and 17 or 19 the way he had in Atlanta. So I think that him staying in Cleveland, there's a greater probability. And they also, I told you this, whoever you're playing for, they have a huge advantage. His wife, his family, they're comfortable in Cleveland. So as long as the Cavs continue to show LeBron, I think that they did that with Kobe at the trade deadline, they have some young assets who LeBron would enjoy playing with into the future. So they didn't hurt their chances on the trade deadline. I believe that they enhanced it. So I believe it's beyond the 50-50 because he's there now and the smile on his face. I know that holds some type of weight with LeBron. But right now, I do agree with you. He does not know.
I intensely believe that the odds of LeBron staying in Cleveland after this year are the exact same odds as the Cavs have of winning the title. So whatever chance you give the Cavs of winning the title, that's the chance they have of keeping LeBron for another year. I have every reason to believe that LeBron, despite the moves at the trade deadline, does not trust Dan Gilbert. I also have good reason to believe that LeBron wants his next contract, ideally, to be different than these last ones. His next contract, I believe he wants that full supermax, 4 years with the 10-year, you know the numbers.
Yep.
He'd get 4 years like $165 million, something absurd like that, as opposed to the 1-year deals that he's been doing. I do not believe he will ever sign that type of contract in Cleveland with Dan Gilbert, because once he does that, he loses all power and all influence. And he saw this offseason, the one offseason he's come back where he didn't have power, didn't have influence, the chaos that the team went through with no David Griffin, with trading Kyrie Irving. So if he does go back, I think it's either picking up the option or declining the option and just signing another 1+1, another 1-year deal. But I think he only does that if they're the defending champs.
The influence is the big part of this because he does wield unprecedented power within that organization. Everybody knows that. But to your point on the youth movement there, like they got guys that are going to get better. Jordan Clarkson's going to get better. Rodney Hood's going to get better. George Hill maybe not, but Larry Nance can be a rotation player with that team. And all of a sudden, if this team gets back to the finals.
But George Hill with LeBron.
George Hill with LeBron, but he's still 31, almost 32 years old. He's not going to age all that gracefully. I think he's already started to take a bit of a step back on the defensive end. But, you know, what they can do if the Cavs get back to the finals, all of a sudden you look at the Nets. And the Nets are sinking the standings. I didn't see that coming. But the Nets are bottoming out right now. What if that pick turns into a top 3 pick? And LeBron says, look, I'll stay, but you have to deal that pick for somebody else. They'll do it. They've done it before. They traded Andrew Wiggins away in the Kevin Love deal. They'll move that pick in order to get a 25, 26-year-old star who can help the Cavs right away. So everything Cleveland can offer now is really kind of different than it was a week ago. They have younger players. They have a draft pick to deal, and they're a better team today than they were on Thursday.
Certainly. I mean, I guess my question then goes back to the long-term future, which is really what you were alluding to, Nick. You're saying maybe this unprecedented aggressive move by Cleveland here at this trade deadline gets them another year, maybe 2, but his career does not end in Cleveland, really under any scenario?
Well, I can't say under any scenario. What I do believe is that all the reports about how frayed the Gilbert-LeBron relationship is.
The relationship is not good.
It is. Those are accurate. And so if LeBron, he might this offseason have to make some type of choice. Do I want to sacrifice some potential millions on the back end of my career while not taking the 4-year? Because there will be a time, it's hard to see it, but there will be a time at some point where NBA teams are like, I don't want LeBron James at $40 million a year for the next 4 years. Like, it's hard to see it now, but that time will exist. And so he will have to make that decision. That decision, to me, was going to be incredibly easy for him if they got washed in the finals, or if, as you guys were saying, pre-trade deadline, if they somehow didn't make the finals. It's hard to – we've never seen a great player walk away from a champion, aside from retirement. We've seen a guy retire. We've never seen a great player win a title and then go sign with someone else. If they win the title, I don't think LeBron will be the first to break that mold.
Well, the 1+1 part of it, though, is why I think he does go back to that type of deal, because it gives him, you know, some leverage on the outside. So let's say he goes in the summer of 2018. Now, I don't think Paul George is going anywhere. I've been on record saying that. I think Paul George is pretty happy in Oklahoma City and doesn't want to go to the mess that the Lakers are. So LeBron looks around the landscape and says, all right, Paul George is staying there. DeMarcus Cousins is staying in New Orleans. Let's roll this thing over. Let's go into 2019. And let's make the Cavs deal that top 5 pick for something else. And then 2019, you can look at it. Exactly. You have a whole bunch of guys on the market once again that you can mess with.
The topic here. We're going to move on now to our Super Bowl champion Eagles. Now, their offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, will be the new head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. Reich's been the OC for Philadelphia for the last 2 seasons. Chris Carter, how big of a loss will this ultimately be for the Eagles?
Well, I believe the head coach in Doug Peterson, Frank Reich was his blanket. You know, as a little kid, a kid has his blankie. Frank being a former backup in this league, him and Doug combined experience close to almost 30 years of playing in the NFL. There's a comfort level. And when you are a young head coach, which Doug is, there's only so many people that you can confide in as far as your weaknesses or things that you necessarily don't know. As a young coach, you'd like to project that, yeah, I know everything. But Frank was that guy for Doug that he could go to, and he could answer a lot of questions. The overall development, I think that we went through a period of time, the most undercoached position in the National Football League is the quarterback. But these guys got 2 of them. Right. Man, they got 2 guys who played in the league.
What do you mean the most undercoached position?
It's the most undercoached. If you looked at guys where there's lack of coaching, it's the quarterback. It's not offensive line. It's not wide receiver. It's lack of fundamentals by quarterbacks. Now, we've gotten into an era where the quarterbacks are starting to get more specific, more specifically coached. So we believe they've improved the last few years, but it was an undercoached position. Wow. How deep is Doug Peterson is his coaching reservoir? Because this is what happens when you're successful.
Right.
Teams pluck your offense coordinator. They pluck your quarterback coach. Now, I wouldn't be as concerned if they didn't lose DeFilippo to Minnesota.
Right. That's their quarterback's coach who already went to Minnesota to be their OC.
I mean, so he doesn't have a coaching tree. He only been a head coach for 2 years. So he'd probably have to lean on Andy Reid and his resources to be able to find someone. I believe as a young coach and as a play caller, it's going to be more distracting with them being the head, with him being the head coach and all the other responsibilities around the team. How much of the X's and O's is he able to lean on with the other coordinator? So I believe it will be a problem going forward. How much of a problem, we don't know, but they do have Carson Wentz. Let's not forget that Carson Wentz is a stud. He knows the offense is his 3rd year, so I don't believe it will affect him as much with Doug still being there. But when you are a young coach and you lose 2 of your lieutenants immediately, I would be naive to say, oh, this is not going to affect the Philadelphia Eagles.
The Eagles almost did the rare thing, win a Super Bowl and keep all their key coaches.
Yes.
They were this close. Obviously, Doug Peterson staying. Jim Schwartz, their D coordinator, his name was in some coaching discussions for head coaching jobs, but he didn't get it. And where is the offensive coordinator, Frank Reich, going? Indianapolis. Why does Indianapolis have an opening this late in the year? Because Josh McDaniels left him at the altar. Like, if Josh McDaniels just keeps his word, Philadelphia goes into next year with both coordinators intact from a defending Super Bowl champion, which is a rare thing. We saw the Patriots were able to do it last year, and then this year almost lost both of them, did end up losing one of them. So the Patriots, a few days after the Super Bowl, ended up getting us a slight win over Philadelphia. But you mentioned Carson Wentz. That is the key here. How many quarterbacks have we seen that part of the story of why they didn't get quite to where we thought they could was because of consistent turnover at either their head coach position or their offensive coordinator? Now, we've already seen Wentz. I don't want to say Wentz has realized his full potential, but when in year 2, through 3/4 of the season, you're the leading candidate for MVP, you're damn near close to your full potential. How much will the new offensive coordinator change what his success has already been? And when the quarterback's coach and offensive coordinator is gone, how confident are we that whomever the new OC is not going to change the system somewhat into something that Carson Wentz isn't as comfortable with? That's what I'm looking for.
Do I hear you both telling me that, yes, to your point, Chris, it would be naive to think there's not going to be an impact. There's going to be an impact. But because of the remnants of what Reich has been able to impart upon Carson, it won't be devastating.
Yeah,
is that the
I don't
prediction?
believe it'll be devastating because it's not Frank Reich's system. It's a system that him and Doug Peterson created. It's a combination between Chip Kelly's old system and Andy Reid's West Coast system as far as getting rid of the ball quick. The RPOs and everything with a quarterback read option, those are from Chip Kelly. So I would be more concerned if Doug Peterson was a defensive coordinator and they lost it. I would be more concerned. And I know this is Doug's system. It's not Frank Reich's system. So it's not going to be devastating, but it will affect especially young players. And if you look at the overall rapport between Nick Foles and Carson Wentz and their head coach, yes, you're bringing 2 new bodies in there. You're not only bringing a new new offensive coordinator, but you're also bringing a quarterback coach into this mix. I believe these coaches will adapt to the culture that they've established in Philadelphia.
Let me ask you this right quick, too, Nick. On the flip side of it, how will this affect Andrew Luck? Because people are wondering. The speculation is rampant. Some people, not necessarily me, but some folks on the streets are saying the concerns about Andrew Luck might have been part of McDaniels' reasons for pulling out. I'm just saying.
I think that definitely played a part of it. Now, I don't know that I believe he's going to have another shoulder surgery. If Andrew Luck has another shoulder surgery, it starts to become fair to question whether or not we've already seen the best we will ever see of Andrew Luck. Year 3, his last fully healthy year. But let's assume Andrew Luck's going to, after missing a full season, going to come back close to full strength. I'm excited for not only Luck, but for Frank Reich. A guy that, Cece, you mentioned this late into the year. I think most fans did not know who the Eagles offensive coordinator was. And if you said the name Frank Reich, they weren't like, oh, that's the Eagles OC. They were like, oh, isn't he the guy that had the 35-3 comeback with Buffalo over Houston? Like, that's how they knew him.
Yes.
Frank Reich did a good job in San Diego, now Los Angeles, but at the time it was San Diego with Phillip Rivers. He did an excellent job with Philadelphia with a rookie quarterback, then a second-year quarterback, then fitting in Jay Ajayi, then developing some of the Doug Peterson RPO stuff. I'm excited to see him with the guy. He's not going to run a lot of that RPO stuff. A different type of system with a different type of quarterback with Andrew Luck. Now, all of it keys on what you alluded to. How healthy is Andrew Luck? But a guy that kind of went under the radar. He was the coordinator we didn't talk about. Everyone talked about Jim Schwartz. Didn't talk as much about Frank Reich. I'm excited to see him in Indianapolis.
And I believe the Colts got very lucky. Now, if they can get that horseshoe to rub Andrew Luck and get Andrew Luck back to being healthy, I believe this could be a great, just late sneak hire because the quarterback, offensive coordinator, head coach relationship is critical. And Indianapolis, they've had great quarterback play, but have they really helped out the quarterback? Most of their quarterbacks being coached up by defensive head coaches. This is the first offensive head coach that they've had in Indy for a long time. So I look forward to that relationship being built. Andrew Luck, hoping that he's healthy because the NFL is a better place with Andrew Luck being on the field.
Finally, Isaiah Thomas. He had a strong debut with the Lakers, I'd say. Thomas scored 22 points, dished out 6 assists coming off the bench. So, Chris Carter, do you think this change of scenery will be really good for Isaiah?
Well, it's great for the Cavs. We don't care nothing about Isaiah. I mean, for real. Well, I mean, Isaiah was not healthy. And let's not get carried away with one game. We also saw him in Cleveland. The first game he came back, we were like, oh, wow, this is Isaiah that we thought that we knew. Isaiah's going to have to change his whole thought process. We saw the text from his agent, supposedly in all caps, I will not be coming off the bench. He better change his attitude before he gets there because Magic Johnson, the same day, says, Lonzo Ball is our starting point guard. So I think his attitude will change. He can be a very good bench player, but let's not forget he's not healthy. So it's nice to see his shot go in. But at the end of the game, this was the Isaiah Thomas that I was used to seeing. People playing him at the rim, him not being able to get his shot off in the lane, trying to bail out, throwing the ball away, and turning the basketball over. Like, he needs to realize where his career is right now. It's better coming off the bench with a young team. Be a great example. If he's trying to get a contract extension either with the Lakers or someone else, we're going to have to see more results like we saw in the game that he came back.
Listen, I empathize with Isaiah Thomas because the reality is this. Had Isaiah Thomas, the first time he hurt his hip, done what some doctors told him to do, which is shut it down, he would not have been part of the Kyrie trade because he wouldn't have been a good enough asset at the time. He would have been an injured player who didn't have a 50-point playoff game, who didn't have the amazing story of what he did after his sister tragically passed away. He'd still be in Boston, where people love him, and he would be staring at a rehab with very little pressure on him and probably a big contract out of loyalty from the organization. But that did happen. He did play through the hip injury. He is where he is now. And the best thing for Isaiah is what you said, Chris, is if he can get past what he potentially missed out on, the max contract, and instead look at, if I play well, if I play within myself and get healthy over the next 6 weeks, I can either get a great 1-year deal or a decent 3-year deal, because that's where he is. And I think the contract stuff is what really derailed, in addition to the health, his time in Cleveland, because he had to worry about his own numbers.
Well, even outside the injury, I'm sure there were people in the Celtics organization who did not believe he was a max player. You cannot give a max player to a 5'8" player. I don't care how many points he gets. I don't care if he's got 60 in the playoff game. Like, you cannot, and especially Danny Ainge with all those draft picks and everything, they had to move some of those players. So to think that Isaiah wasn't potentially going to be moved, yes, injuries are a part of the game. He didn't think he was going to hurt himself. That's the reason why he stayed out there. He was also trying to stay out there so he can get that superstar contract. So in trying to say, I feel sorry for him, you are in control of your own body. He pushed his body to get out there, not the organization.
Let me ask you this, Nick. We all know as adults, it's not so much what happens to you in life, because life happens. It's how you respond to it, right? So the response that we're seeing from Isaiah, from a mental standpoint, from a focus standpoint, some people are disappointed. It's not showing necessarily the maturity they would expect for a National Basketball Association player.
He has not handled this well. There's no doubt about it. He has not handled this well. My point is, I do not think there are many people who would have handled it well, dealing with everything he's dealt with in the last 9 months of his life on and off the court. I was very frustrated with Isaiah Thomas with the Cavs because he was doing things. Not only was he not playing well, he wasn't even he was doing things off the court that were distracting and that were divisive, and on the court he was the worst player on their team. Now he's in Los Angeles, which oddly in the NBA in 2018 is a lower pressure environment than Cleveland, and where he can dominate the ball more, where he can be more like he was in Boston last year, and he can potentially reclaim some of that value that he's lost over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I hear you. It just seems like we're going to shift and put him in a smaller pond, so to speak, and let him kind of be his best self versus rising to the occasion of the demand.
Isaiah's biggest problem was thinking he was on the same level with LeBron James.
Oh,
okay, and thinking he was the same type of leader that LeBron was, and that he was like it was a trade, Kyrie for IT. No, it wasn't. Draft picks and some other players thrown in there. So no, perspective is the best thing that he can get. All right, and I'm sure he got that in Los Angeles.
Traded again, probably.
Yeah, that's crystal clear. All right, now back to the NFL.
Yeah, Nick trying to be.
The Eagles spent the week celebrating their first Super Bowl win, but it turns out not all the Eagles, well, they're not all Patriots fans. Offensive tackle in front of the show, Lane Johnson, spoke out about the differences between the two teams. Take a listen.
I just think the Patriot way it's a fear-based organization. Obviously, do they win? Hell yes, they win. They won for a long time. Do I think people enjoy, can say, I had a lot of fun playing there? No, I don't.
Right.
That's just God honest truth. Are they successful? But when they go to interviews, they act like robots. Hey, let's stop being a we can be cordial for a little bit. Hey, you only get to do this job one time, so let's have fun while we're doing it. You know, not to be reckless, but hey, I would much rather have fun and win a Super Bowl than be miserable and just
win 5 Super Bowls.
Yeah, win 5 Super Bowls, but hey.
Woo. All right, Chris Carter, is Lane Johnson there just telling the truth about the Patriots?
I mean, that's what NFL players, that's what they say off the record. Lane just said it on the record. Mm-hmm. It's something that we've known for a long, long time. It's no different than when you make the choice as a high school athlete and you are a 5-star, I'm going to go to the University of Alabama. You are not going to have the same experience that you are if you go to Clemson or Ohio State with Urban Meyer and Dabo Swinney. Like, these guys are not part of the fun bunch. Nick Saban and Bill Belichick, no. You do not want them to throw you a party. No, they are there to teach the essence of football, and it's not a lot of fun to be around them. So it's not like Lane's guessing. He got 2 players, LeGarrette Blount and Chris Long, who told him, hey, you know something? It's not that much fun up there. I've got guys who I played ball with in college, who they were part of New England, and Bill Belichick. I had a guy, one of my great teammates, I'm not going to say his name, he sat next to Bill Belichick for 2 straight years. Bill Belichick didn't even say hi to him. I mean, he was a frontline player. Right. This is just how Bill and this is how the Patriots, how they do business. They are not into the relationship part. No, you are here to do a job, and I'm going to try to help you do that job. And when I feel like you're not the best person for that job, it's not going to be emotional. I'm going to let you go.
As an athlete, does what he said bother you? As a guy that, with no disrespect to your career, as a guy who never got to win a Super Bowl,
no.
Does it bother you that he's saying, I'd rather have one with some fun to it, or this amazing run of success with a more regimented disciplinarian schedule?
No, we need coaches like Bill Belichick in the NFL. We don't need all the coaches be the same. No, this coaching style will always be a part of football. That being high school, that being college, teaching the fundamentals, and the coach being true to his personality. Like, this is who Bill Belichick is. It's not as if it's some type of front. Yeah. It's authentic. This is who he's going to be at the beginning and the end of the day, and it's a necessary evil in sports.
All right, I want to tell the audience something. One of the reasons I wanted the Steelers to do well this year, one of the reasons, even though I picked against them, I'm glad the Eagles did well this year, is I think this element of the Patriot way is nonsense. I think the Patriot way, step 1 is get Tom Brady. Step 2 is make sure you did step 1. Step 3 is have a genius at your head coach in Bill Belichick who pays attention to detail, who knows all the intricacies of the rules, who has everything buttoned up. Step 4 is be amazing with your salary cap. Somewhere around step 9 or 10 is the nonsense with say nothing in interviews. Never, ever show any personality. I do not think that contributes more than 1% or 2% to winning. So I like it when a team like the Eagles that is less buttoned up wins. I would have liked it if the Steelers won. I like it when because what we see is with the Patriots' success, I saw it firsthand in Kansas City and then amazingly firsthand in Houston when a Bill Belichick acolyte was Scott Pioli went and ran the Chiefs, Bill O'Brien went and ran the Texans, and they acted as if a huge part of that success is teaching our players how to do media. Teaching our players what not to say. I do not buy into that. So I think Lane Johnson, what he said is interesting, but I think it's a false choice. I think you can win a bunch of Super Bowls and still have fun. The Patriots have just done it without fun, but I don't think the lack of fun has contributed to the winning.
To think that winning is not fun, all right, as a professional athlete, I don't think that's right. I think that there are players that have had fun in New England. You're just not going to have the normal amount of fun as an adult that you would have. Now, New England players, they have just as much fun as anyone else in the offseason. During the season, they're buttoned up. It's been a proven way to win. So I'm not going to say the Patriot system, it doesn't work. They've been hosting the Lombardi Trophy more than anyone else in the last 20 years, so it does work.
I was going to say, I mean, nobody was happier than myself to see Philly come out there and win, frankly, because I'm still bitter about the 2004 Super Bowl when they whooped butt on my Panthers. But anyway, I digress. Here's the point. I tend to agree with Chris on this, Nick, because it does work. And if that's a sacrifice that certain players are willing to make to get to that level of dynasty-style success, I don't know who any of us are to question it.
Here's my point. Let's look back to Chris's career. What if every morning before you went to practice, you ate 2 eggs over easy? And we said, when we were looking at your career, we're like, hey, part of the route to success, to being an all-time wide receiver, is all the training in the offseason, all the hard work, all the route running, all that crazy stuff to do with your hands. And then also, by the way, don't forget, those 2 eggs over easy.
So what you're doing here, Nick, is you're talking about causation, right? So you're talking about, do these particular choices cause the success they're having? And I don't think that we can extract that component and know for sure whether or not it's a cause and effect type of dynamic.
This is the thing. They have done it with less talented players. Mm-hmm. So the system and everyone being focused on the same page, and we're all going to say the same things. It works. Now, if you had a roster that had a bunch of Pro Bowlers, it might not work. But what Bill Belichick, what they do, it works.
It's no different than Duke, and I can't stand that I have to even say their names.
Duke has more talent because they go after the star players.
Fine, but that's new, though, in the sense of these one-and-doners are new for Duke. But Duke, you're not having that much fun playing for Coach K in Durham. Trust me, I've talked to them as well.
Well, this is the thing, though, all right? It's different in college getting a scholarship because you're turning down. Now, look at Amendola, look at Wes Welker, look at Tom Brady. Look at all these guys, how they thrive under that system. So we can't say that there's something wrong with that system. Sure. I would have loved to have the type of discipline that Bill Belichick had. I would have loved to play for Bill Belichick. I still would have had a lot of fun playing football because, for me, it's about playing the game. And if I can get someone to help me play the game, playing the game is fun enough for me.
With that, we're going to now move to the NFL. Talking about the Cowboys, they're coming off of a disappointing season, 9-7. But a season in which Dak Prescott may have taken a step backwards, and Zeke Elliott, of course, missing 6 games due to a suspension. To make matters worse, well, they had to sit back and watch their divisional rivals, the Eagles, take home the big trophy. Cowboys CEO, though, Stephen Jones, he didn't seem to enjoy watching them hoist up that trophy. Take a listen.
There's no love lost on the field, amongst our members in the NFC East. Certainly have a tremendous amount of respect for the Redskins, the Giants, and the Eagles. But we certainly want to beat them. And certainly it's interesting to see that they're playing, they ended up being the Super Bowl champion. We're in their division. We feel like we're very competitive with them and know that we have to get better if we want to certainly walk in their shoes. A big couple of months coming up, next 3 months between unrestricted free agency, between the draft. Will McClay, our coaching staff, and Jerry and I really got to roll up our sleeves and improve our football team. And if we do that, we think we've got a great opportunity to compete for a Super Bowl championship.
Okay, Chris Carter, so they want to compete for a championship. They think they can compete for a championship based off of what you've seen, both with personnel and players. Can they?
Yes, they have the championship caliber nucleus there, but do they have to get better? As Steven said, they have to get better. They have to get better. They got to diversify their offense. They just can't be a powerful between the tackles offense. They don't do anything around the outside, and they do very few things deep down the field. I think they need to get more speed onto their offense, and their secondary is young, but they need playmakers. They need another safety, someone to be able to turn the ball over. We saw last year, David Irvin, we saw that them getting a rush inside and outside. So those things are developing. They need to get more explosive on the offensive. They are very predictable as far as what they do and how they attack defenses. So, and Dak's got to get better. Dak has to be able to be a pocket passer. We can't expect Dak to go backwards the way that we saw him go back in year two. That he didn't have the type of development that we would expect to see from a guy who started as many games as he did going into year two. I expect Dak to make a huge jump. I did talk to Dak. I saw him. He's looking forward to this offseason and growing his game.
Is this one of those examples, Chris, you talked about earlier of an undercoached quarterback position? Does he need better coaching?
I don't think it's undercoached. They need to utilize their scheme better. They don't do anything sideline to sideline. So teams can hunker down inside the box, and if they take Ezekiel Elliott out of the running game, they are not a great passing team. They need to get more speed at their tight end position. So I don't believe it's lack of coaching. I believe their personnel, and they got to make some tough decisions. Do they bring Dez Bryant back at that number, given the lack of productivity that he's had?
The Eagles are actually a good sign for the Cowboys moving forward in this regard. The Cowboys can look at what happened from 2 years ago to this year and say, why can't the same thing happen from this year to next year? The Cowboys went from 13-3 to out of the playoffs. The Eagles went from out of the playoffs to 13-3. Along with, by the way, the Cowboys had an MVP candidate quarterback. Dak wasn't the leading candidate the way Carson Wentz was, but he was an MVP candidate quarterback to a guy that struggled. Carson Wentz went from a guy that was struggling to the MVP candidate quarterback before he got hurt. The Cowboys, they have all pros. They have as many all-pro caliber players as nearly any team in football. The problem is, and I don't know if I want to call it a problem, is it's all not only on one side of the football, but it's all basically on one part of the team. It's your offensive line, it's your running back. So it's guys that are going to help you with exactly what you said, the thing they're already good at. We're going to punch you in the mouth and run the football. Right. But they don't have a single truly dynamic playmaker on offense, be it a great tight end or one dynamic wide receiver, because Dez isn't that anymore. And on defense, it was just David Irving having a semblance of a pass rush. DeMarcus Lawrence being with those guys were revelations. Having a what you would call in the NBA a twitchy, like, you know what I mean, one of those long, rangy safeties. When was the last time we saw that with the Cowboys, or a linebacker that terrified you? Sean Lee's an excellent player. You have to now build into it, like bake into it, the given 3 or 4 games you're going to miss due to injury.
Yes.
So the Cowboys can be right back there, assuming they add the one dynamic playmaker on the outside and somebody in the defensive back 7 that scares you.
Also, Earl Thomas. Let's not forget about the meeting after the Seattle game. Him coming over to the Dallas locker room.
Awkward.
There's continued to be noise, even at the Pro Bowl. Yeah. And Earl Thomas, in the last year of his contract, wants to go back, wants to play for Dallas at some point. It's a perfect time. Pete Carroll, they're making changes there. Sherman's in his last year there, so I expect them to make some changes. Is Dallas able to pull off a deal like that? Because let's not forget, Philadelphia, in getting the 13-3, what did they do? Oh, they traded for Jay Ajayi. Oh, Chris Long took a 1-year deal. Oh, LeGarrette Blount. They look at all the pieces. They
traded for Ronald Darby.
Yeah, look at all the pieces that they added. You know, and I wouldn't say that Carson Wentz, his rookie year was a disaster. I mean, he had some success. But he hit the wall just like any other rookie hits, and they were able to build on it in year number 2.
Well, they got to do something, because there's a whole generation out here in America, these kids, they don't know why they're even called the Cowboys, America's team. No, they think the Patriots are America's team.
Since 96, CC, what is it? They have as many wins in the playoffs.
As Philadelphia had this year, as Nick Foles had.
That ain't great. Hey, everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lalas's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lalas will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
Going back to the New England Patriots. Now, we haven't really heard a lot from Tom Brady since he took that L to the Philly Eagles. That is until Friday, when he said, quote, the Super Bowl loss was a learning experience. And then he went on a bit of a social media tear after that. Posted this from his IG page from Costa Rica. Quote, this Sunday's outcome is a lot better than last Sunday.
Damn, Tom. What was the outcome?
Well, I forgot. What was that? The L he took? Well, at least he's kissing Giselle right there. That's nice. So, Chris Carter, after all of the success, yes, he's lost 3 times in the Super Bowl. Look at you. Haven't we learned that we should not doubt Tom Brady and his ability to get back in this thing?
Well, this is, and Nick brings up a great point. When we started the season, there was no team in recent history that was as big as favorite as New England was. Now, the team that took the field in Super Bowl 52 was totally different than the team we thought that they would have. They had unprecedented action as far as free agency, the Brandon Cook trade, the type of pieces they had put around Tom. We were like, wow, they're doing this so they can make a run in the next 2 to 3 years.
Absolutely.
I'm not worried about Tom Brady. I'm worried about their defense. Right. I mean, last season they gave up 60 passes over 20 yards. One of the worst defensive teams that we've seen. And a Belichick team, they lost their defensive coordinator. We know that Malcolm Butler's going to be leaving. Hightower, their injured middle linebacker, we don't know when he's going to come back. They don't have a pass rusher under the age of 38.
I mean, James Harrison and
so we can take as many pictures of Tom and Giselle as we want to, kissy, but those are the 2 most talented in New England. And sometimes this is not a talented.
Tom and
Giselle? They don't have a talented roster.
And sometimes when you bend and you bend and you bend, you break. And that's what the Patriots did at the beginning of the season. 11 straight drives in the red zone to start their season. They gave up points. And guess what happened at the end of the season? 11 straight drives in the red zone that gave up points. The bend but don't break sounds great, but the problem with continually bending is you're more likely to break. And so I am not going to doubt Tom Brady. I tried that. I tried getting on that train this year. I had all these numbers. 40-year-old quarterbacks. Here's the precedent. He lit those on fire en route to winning the league MVP. Then he had a bit of a down December, and it's like, oh, maybe I could be right. No. Fourth quarter comeback against the Jags, and then one of the greatest Super Bowl performances we've ever seen, despite the loss. Just raw numbers. They had no running game. They had no defense. He had to do all of it. Yeah. But there are real questions about the defense. Like, yes, Julian Edelman will be back on offense, but he'll be back post-ACL and a year older. Rob Gronkowski, I don't believe he's going to retire. I believe he will be back, but you can't pencil him in for a full year at any point in his career. Brandon Cooks will be back, and Brandon Cooks is a good player. I think the Pats, almost no matter who's out there, will find ways to score points on offense as long as Tom Brady's there.
Yes.
We know Josh McDaniels coming back. But the defense needs some talent. Like, period, point blank. You need some blue-chip guys. They had some blue-chip guys, by the way, in the last few years, and they got rid of them.
Yes.
Chandler Jones was a blue-chipper.
Yes.
Has been incredibly successful post-New England. They got rid of him. Jamie Collins wasn't quite a blue-chipper. Jamie Collins, though, was the most physically talented member of their defense.
Yes.
They got rid of him. Dante Hightower, they didn't want to get rid of him. He got hurt, so they still have him. But, who's there? Malcolm Butler was looking like he was going to turn into a blue chipper. He's going to be gone.
Yeah.
There are I have questions about the Pats, but it's not about their quarterback.
Yeah, okay. They don't have the salary cap space either to go out and make a bunch of changes. And, Tom Brady, I know that the Boston Globe, that article. Boston Herald, that article was disputed, but is there some realness right now with Tom Brady playing it for only $14 million and them not having the assets running? Is that a real thing? I also believe that they will be hurt by losing their defensive coordinator. I know Josh is coming back on the offensive side, but it's hard to replace that type of intel. And they haven't been great on defense the last several years.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Tom Brady, I don't disagree with anything you gentlemen have said. He can put that offense on his back and carry it completely across the finish line, but there has to be a question of defense because these other teams are just getting better offensively. I mean, you look at Philly, you look at some of these other teams.
Yeah, but let's look at the AFC. We believe that Deshaun Watson in Houston, he'll be back as legitimate. If Andrew Luck gets back, they'll be a legitimate contender. We know in Pittsburgh, they're coming back firing. And Jacksonville is just getting started. One of the best defenses we've seen in a long time.
And then you've got in Kansas City, if Patrick Mahomes is what they think he will be, that team should be. Why are you rolling your eyes at my Chiefs?
If a fifth was.
All right, if was a fifth, we'd be drunk. I get it, CC. Let me have some faith in Pat Mahomes. I'm at another team. Denver, if they sign Kirk Cousins. Like, Kirk Cousins is likely going to an AFC team because those are the teams that need quarterbacks. Yeah. So the AFC East will still probably be theirs for the taking. Like the AFC East.
Dolphins, Jets, and the Bills.
Right, we don't trust any of them.
That's like an easy win.
Yes.
But no, I don't doubt Brady. But are they talented enough on defense to win 3 playoff games? They weren't this year. The question will they be next year?
I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long.